folks, welcome to Time to Talk with Nick Ridley. Just had Nick Ridley back in for another chat to talk about things like dogging in and rabbit pens and cocker spaniels and gun shooting and just basically chewing the fat about all the different things that are coming up at the minute in the gun dog world and the shooting world. So get yourself a cuppa and settle back and enjoy Time to Talk with Nick Ridley. Take care, stay safe, bye-bye. So, hi folks, back with the lovely Nick Ridley again. I'm so glad. So what's this, the third time back? Third time lucky, huh?
Second time.
Well, you came, the second time you came, you interviewed me.
Oh, of course, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I forgot,
So
I forgot about that one.
But the third time here.
I forgot about that, and I bet you wish you had as well.
I can't believe how nervous I was, actually. I was like, oh my God, this is really nerve-wracking.
Well, hopefully people found it interesting. So
the podcasts are going down really well, Nick, which is awesome.
Good.
So originally it was planned just to get us through lockdown, you know, to give people something to listen to and occupy their minds. But people are loving them, so I'm going to keep going.
Good.
And so I've got a list of people lined up. I'm going to start doing all the interviews again because I've had a bit of a break.
Yeah.
But it's the end, I'm just checking the date, it's the end of July, and this is going to go out probably in about 3 weeks' time, so it'll be mid-August, so we'll just have gone into the grouse season.
Yep.
And I thought it'd be great to talk to you about dogging in.
Yep.
Is a wonderful,
glad you got that right. Yep.
A
Please
wonderful gun dog term.
Yeah, nobody Google it, for God's sake. Yeah.
Sorry?
Nobody Google that, for God's sake. Yeah.
Well, we've got some great terms. So, dogging in.
Yep.
And also I saw that you had young Percy on rabbits for the first time. So
yeah, the rabbit pen. Yeah.
Talking to you about rabbit pens and just generally getting the dogs ready for the season. And I want to talk to you about cockers because the last 6 or 7 podcasts I've said, oh yeah, what dog have you got? Vizsla. And so it's really nice to get into different breeds as well. So
just before we start that, you just mentioned, I'll just pick you up on the grouse because that's partly where I've been up on the Cumbrian Fells this last weekend. Not anything to do with the grouse, but we saw quite a few up there. And I've just read a report this morning.
Really?
All the grouse counts are just about finished now. So for those people that don't know, about the end of July, middle of July, they do grouse counts. So what they do is they'll take out mainly pointers, but spaniels will go out as well. And they, the keepers up there obviously know their ground, their moors. And for years and years and years, they'll basically hunt the same block. So that block could be an acre, 2 acres, whatever. So what you do is you hunt your dogs and you count the birds that the dogs flush. Mm-hmm. So what they're flushing at this time are adults and like older chicks, because obviously they're the chicks that I had earlier in the spring now are pretty well ready to go. Mm-hmm. And what they can do then is by taking the numbers of that particular block and looking back over the years, they then can calculate the density of grouse on the moors. Right. And then they would decide this late as to whether or not they'll shoot. They start on the 12th of August. If they consider that there are not enough grouse on the moors, then the shooting will be cancelled. But from what I've read today and what I hear and what I'm hearing, this will be the first time in 3 years that most of the moors will have grouse shooting because of the population has recovered. The weather, there was weather, wet, drought, a lot of things affected them over the previous years and the numbers plummeted. So they didn't shoot.
I mean, it's amazing that they manage the grouse moor so well. It's fantastic because you know, I was talking to Russell Hurd, who does grouse up in the Hebrides. And being a person who's done driven shooting, you know, so the pheasants and partridges and then occasionally woodcock and some walk-up days. But primarily it's driven shooting that I do. And so the whole grouse moor being like wild and self-managed and managed from a conservation perspective rather than managing from the number of birds that you're putting down for the season. I just find the whole thing really fascinating. I think it's the way they manage the moors.
I listened to Howard Kirby's podcast with you the other week, and obviously Howard spoke about the grouse as well. And it's a fantastic place. I mean, as soon as we got up onto the fells, and we got up there on the rabbits, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but you know, there's curlew, there's oyster catchers, we saw 2 ravens. There was a pair of peregrines up there while we were up there. So people go on about this persecution on moors, but actually, if you just stop and look and listen, actually, is the real fascinating thing. I mean, those curlews are just fantastic, and the moors are managed, and indirectly the grouse are managed. They're managed in terms of not food, but I suppose they are managed in terms of food, because they burn the heather to bring the new shoots up, and that's what the young grouse feed on, or the insects. They put grit down, because obviously they need that grit to digest their food. So that's something the keepers do. And in more recent years, they're using medicated grit to cope with worms, which that's why the population actually has increased so well recently. But it's like everything, you know, these moors will only hold a number of grouse, and then becomes overpopulated, and that's why shooting, in a way, is the management of the stock levels, because ultimately what it's going to come down to is food.
Yeah, and it's the same with you know, we do culling as well, don't we? So we'll cull the deer to prevent the population of the deer, because then that has a detrimental effect on the conservation and also the other animals in the area as well.
It's management.
It is.
It's management. We call it culling. The Americans have a wonderful phrase. They call it harvesting.
Oh, okay.
So, which is a kind of a softer way, but at the end of the day, it's wildlife management. It is. And yes, the grouse moors and the grouse are managed for the benefit of shooting, but the wider community benefits from that, as Howard said. You know, hotels, car hire, beaters. I mean, the guys that go beating up, their hats off to them, because that is a hard day's work. But
it's really hard.
But they're in an environment where there's very little chance of an income.
I know,
especially you know, if you're a student or something like that.
I know, and I've just picked up. I'm going to do a little plug. The Advancement Gun Dog is at the back. The importance of the rural community. You know, the Countryside Alliance very kindly let me put that up, which was out of print, and I find that amazing, because it shows you, for one person going shooting, the amount of people involved behind it. Things that you don't think about, you know, like shoemakers and dog food manufacturers and dog boxers and Land Rover people. And
do you know do you know another one, which is going to be really important this year, especially with everything we've gone through?
Go on then.
Tax revenue. VAT. Tax revenue.
Yes.
You know, and the government, I can't remember the exact figures. There was a moor in Scotland, actually. I think it was last year, when they couldn't shoot. And it was some hundreds of thousands of pounds loss of tax revenue to the government through them not being able to shoot on the moors.
Wow.
So
amazing.
Yeah, it's a I mean, shooting generally generates a huge income in so many different ways. But the moors, the grouse moors, I mean, people say it's elitist. Well, is it elitist? No, it's just a different level of shooting. I know builders that go up and shoot grouse. I've been lucky enough to shoot one in my life, and that's all I ever wanted to do, just a walked up grouse, which I did with Ted 2 years ago, Ted my cocker, and it was something just to tick off of my wish list, really. I had plenty of shots at them, but I managed the one, which is all I wanted, and that's in my freezer now. So, but there we go. I just wanted to touch on that, because you mentioned about obviously the time of the year and everything, and it was just a nice opportunity just to kind of expand really the benefits.
No, it's awesome. And when I mean, you know, like my kinesiology background, we always think of, you know, one change will have a massive effect on everything. And so what we do is one little change that you make, if you liken it to dropping a pebble in a pond, and the change is the pebble hitting the water, but then the ripples that go out have a massive effect on everybody around you. So everybody around you gets the benefit of your change. And it's the same with this, isn't it? One person going shooting, or one day shooting is the pebble hitting the pond, and the ripples are everybody and everything, and the environment which benefit from it.
And bearing in mind, where these moors are, they are in the middle of nowhere. They are in rural communities.
Yeah.
And the opportunities for those people that live in those, it's farming, basically sheep. That's the mainstay of those areas, is farming, and obviously tourism. But so this coming in August, and it'll be a tremendous boost to providing the virus doesn't get any worse and everything else. But it'll be a tremendous boost to those areas that have missed out massively on a lot of things. So just from what I read today, it sounds pretty positive. And I know my friend that I stayed with, she picks up on the grouse, and I think she's got about 20 days booked.
Wow, that's amazing.
She'd normally do 45 plus. But you see, there's a classic example. That's a big income for her. The last 2 years, nothing. Just gone. I think she said last year it was about £6,000 or £7,000. They get paid a lot more to pick up and beat than we do down here, I can tell you. But then they work a lot harder.
The grouse mowers are hard work.
My knees are still sore now.
Really?
From and I was only up there for, what did we do? About 6 hours in total. So it had been 3 lots of 2 or 3 hours each lot. So yeah, my knees are still sore now.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't pick up on grouse. No way.
Yeah.
No way. But it's so interesting because like I know a lot of people where they've got a few dogs, and picking up is their main income.
Yeah.
And it is so important on top of all of the jobs, but I think it's really important for the bonding and the getting together. You know, I mean, one of my friends hates the winter, but to me it's like it's the start of another cycle. You know, it gets like now it's like, oh my god, it's nearly the glorious 12th, and then before you know it, in partridge, and then we're into the pheasant season, and then it's Christmas, and then it's the get together at the end of the season, and then it's
the other thing with these grouse moors, and you talk about people picking up and stuff, that like it's for the professional trainers, it's a showcase for them as well. You know, their dogs are on show, and that work that can come to them can come in forms of selling trained dogs, or dogs coming in for residential training or lessons. So if you take that chunk of opportunity out of the way, and especially on the moors, because you can see everything. If you're picking up in a woodland, the guns can't see you. Nobody else can really see you because you're just going to go and do your work and come out and put your game on the game trailer. But on the moors, they're sending these Labradors 300, 400, 500 yards across, down steep, over ditches, steep hills, up through bracken. So, you know, for an element of these people, the professionals, it's a showcase for them. Yeah. And if you take that away, not only they're losing their income from actually doing the job, they're also losing any potential income going forward as regarding their training. So fingers crossed. I mean, we all need a little bit of luck this year and a bit of good fortune. So hopefully that'll go well, and people will get a few days, and that money will start going back into the community and everything else. So fingers crossed. But it looks good at the moment.
That's really good news. And by the time this goes out, we'll find out.
We'll know. Yeah.
We'll know.
We'll know.
We'll know how it went. So how did you find going up the Cumbria?
Oh, I love it up there. I try and get up there about 4 or 5 times a year. I managed to get up just before lockdown. I go up to Fran Ardley, who's the gun dog trainer for the Sporting Gun, who I write the articles for. And so this trip actually worked quite well because I had a job to do for Chudley, the dog food, which was suspended before lockdown. So I managed to rekindle that. So I did that while I was up there. Lots of training, which we'll talk about with Percy. Managed to get out and shoot a few rabbits over Ted. which I always love, and got my stuff done for the magazine. So it was a real, and I am shattered. I came back on Monday. It's about 5 hours, and it's early in the morning, and we don't sit down to eat till kind of 8:45, which is totally alien. I normally eat at 6, and I'm going to bed at 9. So it's hard days, but because I don't go up there very often, I just try and cram in as much. And the weather, we were so lucky with the weather, because down home, it was torrential on and off.
Really?
And the only rain we had was overnight. And that's the other thing up there is the weather. You can, well, the further north you go, as you well know, up in Scotland, the weather can be real hit and miss. I did have a funny little thing. Now here's a coincidence. On the Monday, that was a year ago to the day, we did the filming for the new books. And if you remember, that was a baking hot day. And the following day, the weather broke, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah. And on the Monday, I was gonna stay up there this Monday, and I woke up and it was chucking it down.
Really? How funny.
So I got in the car and come home. I'd managed to get everything. But yeah, a year ago to the day. So I normally go up this time of the year. Normally go up March time. This time of the year on the rabbits is not so great because the bracken's so high, and also we're limited to where we can go because of the grouse. So we stay off the heather aspect. But sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it's the one thing. I will poke you if you start rambling because you're tired. Because when I'm tired, I just ramble and ramble and ramble. Shut up, Les.
Yeah.
Rabbits. It's the one thing that I don't like. My dog's picking up, and it's really funny because when I was 17, I worked in a hunt yard. I used to work with hunt horses, and there was, gosh, I'll never forget it. There was this lurcher called Rose, and the little jack whistle called Pip. And it was the time where, you see, it's imprinted. I even remember the dog's names. It was so traumatic. It was a time when there was lots of Maximatosis in Bedlington. I was in Bedlington more.
Blimey, 1954. I didn't realise you was that old.
1984, actually.
Yeah, well, there you go. Must have been the second wave.
Second time round. And what used to happen is Rose would catch them and then Pip would bully her. And I went down to the yard one day and these dogs had a rabbit either side of the rabbit, and I went in to get it off them, and it just went and
nice.
it was just like rabbit guts all over me, and the smell was just horrific, and it really put me off rabbits. And then when I've done cold game days, the guys used to bring cold game for me, you know, pigeons and pheasants and stuff, and one of them brought a bag of rabbits and he went, "There you go, there's some rabbits." And I opened them and it just,
they do smell.
I couldn't hold the smell.
It's probably worth me explaining what going rabbiting means, because, you know, people don't necessarily, I know what it means, you probably know what it means, but people don't necessarily. So what the beauty of going rabbiting with your dogs, especially spaniels, is they hunt in a different way. And the biggest difference is up in the north of the country, the rabbits lay out. Down here, they live in holes under the ground. Okay, so
what do you mean by lay out?
They're literally laying out.
They're just
tucking themselves into.
Tuck out under tufts.
They don't kind of lay up there in the sunshine and get a nice suntan. But they're tucked up in this white grass and tussocks, and obviously bracken, and so the opportunity to actually hunt your dogs on those rabbits is something we don't get down here. Now all the trialing guys and the pros, they've got all their rabbiting ground up there, and it's like mafia wars up there. You know, this one's got this little patch, and this one's got this little patch. God forbid if anybody goes on somebody else's patch.
Well, yeah.
And because ultimately, the other advantage, of course, is that you can train your dogs if you're a professional guy, and you need to train your dogs on game all the time. Well, you can do that with rabbits because there's no closed season for rabbits.
Yeah.
So. But the biggest thing as far as the dogs are concerned, or the biggest advantage is they have to slow themselves down in terms of being more thorough in their hunting, because they will go straight over the top of them.
Yeah, they do.
They've got to get their noses down. So it's a really good way of getting these spaniels, especially hunting tight. As far as shooting them goes, it's one of the most difficult things to do, because you're shooting in little small areas You might get a little, you might have a patch of bracken, patch of heather, and you're going to get a little window to take your shot in. So in terms of that, it's great fun and really challenging. The other thing and probably the most important thing, or the thing I enjoy most of all, are the retrieves. Because you're sending your dog down banks, across little dikes and up hills, and you're handling them on a level so that they're up a hill and you're up a hill and you're like face onto them. Well, of course, we never get that down here because it's so much flatter. So I get a thrill out of it. I honestly do. And I mean, we went out 3 times and shot 5 rabbits. We shot a lot more, or shot at a lot more. So it's not like we're coming away with hundreds of rabbits. That's not the aim of it. And of course, in terms of dogs, your dog's got to be spot on, because that dog needs to flush that rabbit and stop. Because if it runs in after it, you can't take the shot. The dog can disappear off up the fell.
Yeah, rabbits don't go to the ground. Nothing to stop them.
It's happened. It's happened to me a couple of times. So in my eyes, it's the ultimate spaniel work. It really is. And I'm just very privileged that over the last good few years, I've been able to go up there. And I'm going to say, enjoy it. I do enjoy it. And also just the location. When you're looking out over those stone walls and those just stunning. A couple of Septembers ago, we was up there, and it was, and in a way, it spoiled things because it was the most spectacular evening. There was the most stunning sunset, and there were loads of rabbits about. The dogs were working absolutely spot on, and I videoed it actually. I did do a video of it, and you kind of always hanker after that again, and it's probably that classic red letter day.
I do this that perfect moment, isn't it? And then you hanker back after it.
Yeah,
but are you not very hilly where you are, Nick?
Oh, we got a hill. We got a hill in we got a hill in the middle of the village actually called Quainton Hills. But not like, I mean, they're mountains up there.
Well,
and it's a whole different thing. And it's just it's the environment. We take a kettle up there. We make a cup of tea up there. Sometimes we'll buy some cakes or stuff, or we'll do some sausages or whatever. So it's an event, sort of a better word. And it's not about how many rabbits we come off with. It's for me, it's just seeing my dogs work in a different way.
Yeah.
To they work down here.
Yeah.
And fun enough, Fran always says that she knows a pheasant dog and a rabbit dog. I did a little video, and we'll talk about Percy in a minute. But Fran's got 2 of Percy's cousins, so they're about 3 or 4 weeks older than he is. Nearly the same way bred. Percy's granddad is their dad, and we did for the breeder, John Reese. I thought it'd be really lovely. We videoed the 3 of the boys hunting and taking a line. Now Fran's 2 are on that ground all the time. That's what she trains on, and obviously I don't. The difference in their hunting style was so noticeable, and that when you see it, like I see it, obviously when I see the other dogs working up there, but when you see it, 3 similar wave dogs, similar ages, just hunting in a totally different way. I found it quite interesting.
It's really interesting because I've had lots of different. I don't tend to stick with one breed, although the Labrador seems to be my go-to breed. And you see them working together, and they're all hunting differently.
Oh yeah.
And it's so good. It's so nice to watch, and just having to adapt your handling style for the dog that's in front of you, and for the way that they hunt, and giving them, like with the air centre, giving them that little bit of extra time to adjust to the turn and so on. It's really good, really interesting.
And that's probably the biggest thing. You see, when I go down there with Ted, and Ted's been up there a few times now, his head carriage will always start up higher. And then as he gets into it again, you'll see his head carriage come down.
Go down, yeah.
And those dogs that do a lot of rabbit work, their noses are on the ground all the time. And the interesting thing is they tend to be very good on lines as well. So if something gets shot and it runs on, they're following that direct line on the ground. So it's almost like that rabbit comes out of we call it a seat. So it comes out of the seat, goes perhaps 20 yards, it gets shot, and then runs on. Well, the dog is taking that line right from where that rabbit flushed, which is almost going to be under its nose. But it comes on the line and goes.
Yeah.
If you think about a pheasant, that pheasant, if that's tucked in a bit of bracken, dog's gonna find it, that's gonna flush, go up, get shot 20 yards out, fall, and then run. So the biggest difference is in terms of dog's experience. A dog on rabbits is going to be used to taking a line almost from the point of the flush,
nose on the ground,
which a dog that's taking, and probably not have to mark where it's gone, because it's going to follow that scent line away. It doesn't have to watch it. Whereas a dog that, on pheasants, one of its qualities has to be flush it, where's it gone? So it's got to look up and mark it. And again, comparing these little dogs, Percy, Rue and Joss, Percy's marking 100% better than those other two little dogs.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've been doing, and I've been doing that with him.
Yeah.
Did we digress then?
No, it's really good, and it's something that I say to people when they're training a dog is I tend to train like a versatile pet gun dog. So you do all of the different things with your dog. So you're hunting, retrieving, not pointing, but the core hunting, retrieving, steadiness, loose lead walking, and all of that lot. And then what I do is I say to people, once your dog's trained, you then need to work out what you're going to do with your dog. Are you going to go, on open ground? Are you going to be working on high birds? Are you going to be working in the forest? And then once your dog's got all the commands, you then start adapting your training for the ground that you're going to be working them on.
And that's right. And it's, sometimes, I mean, a lot of people will never get the opportunity to work their dogs on rabbits. Never. They'll never get that.
No, I won't.
They'll never get that opportunity because it's such a difficult. You can't buy a day's rabbit shooting.
No.
I don't know anywhere where I could phone up and say, I want to buy a day's rabbit shooting.
No.
I don't know that. It's not like buying pheasant days. So you have to be lucky enough to know people, get invited. But it is a closed shop, really. So this will lead us really nicely on to
rabbit pens.
Rabbit pens. There you go.
Because I enjoy working the dogs in the rabbit pen. I didn't have a rabbit pen. I used to go up to Howard's because Howard was only like 15 miles away, and we used to do a lot of work together. So I would just go up with my dogs, or I would take one of my classes up and go in the rabbit pen, which was great fun. Really good steadiness training.
I think they're a real useful tool, but they can be overused. Now, and also it depends on people's rabbit pens. So the best rabbit pen I ever went and was lucky enough to use was a chap called Simon Tyers, who won the Cocker Championships. Got Tim's Gary. I think hasn't Spud got Tim's Gary in him, isn't he?
Yes.
So Simon's pen was massive. That was probably good 2 acres in size, well stocked with rabbits. But the real good thing about it was that the grass in it was quite dense. Okay. So the rabbits would tuck up in there. Fran's is the same. Fran's is about 1.5 acres. Good thick grass, and she's got some old Christmas trees which are buried in. And so they're the pens I would consider good. And then on the other side, you've got pens that are basically bare ground with stick piles in. Because what happens is the dogs then learn just to go to the stick piles because that's where the rabbits are going to be. So I think a rabbit pen has got two benefits. One is, as you mentioned, their steadiness, and B, to develop that getting the nose down and hunting. And I wanted to put Percy, he was just 12 months old last week. And my aim was really twofold. One, to give him the opportunity to get on scenty ground because he hadn't really been on that environment. I've been working on his pattern and building up that hunting pattern, and B was to start the very early stages of his steadiness to game. I could throw dummies around him all day long, and he'll stop, sit, everything else. And the first day, and I think he's been in my chicken pen as well, and I've only got two chickens in there. Didn't bother him. So we went in the pen to start with, and this was on the Friday, and I travelled up, and again, because I don't go up there very often and not for very long, I tend to want to try and make the maximum amount of use as I can, and it's not always a good thing.
No. So
we went in on the lead. We walked around, and there was a cockbird in the corner, which obviously flown in the pen. So he knew it was there, and he's gone off on me twice. So he's got that drive. Bird flushed out. I blew the stop whistle, just give him a little jerk on the lead, sat his bum down. So that was fine. And then we went on a little bit further, and going back to these rabbits sitting themselves out, we were looking for a rabbit that was sat out. And we found one it was absolutely snuck down in this big thick piece of grass. So I had Percy on the lead again, and I actually had to just, when I say kick the rabbit out, I didn't actually kick it out, but just
nudge it out.
Nudge it out is a better word. So Percy actually saw that go. Whistle, bump on your bum. And so that was part one of that lesson. But the most important part for me was what we did. And he wanted to go after that rabbit. So I blocked him with my body to stop him. And I'll just put the video up, actually. But then I was encouraging him with my hand into what we call the hot seat. And that's where that rabbit had just come out from. Okay. And you'll see him, he's bouncing around me, trying to get around to where the rabbit had gone. And then all of a sudden, he hit that scent. And we'd stood still, hadn't moved. My God, what a difference. His head went down. You could hear him snorting it in. Yeah. And tail going, totally different little dog.
The kind of chunt, I don't know, with that teeth then.
Yeah, he was keen for that. So what we then did, we walked a bit further around and pushed out a rabbit without him seeing it go. And then I just let him off the lead and hunted him on that scent.
Brilliant.
And that was his lesson. And he went like the clappers. So called it a day. We did a little bit of work up on the fells. We'd shot a couple of rabbits. And so Fran drags a lot of rabbits around. So there's scent on the ground. And then we threw a fur ball out for them, hid their eyes and picked the fur ball up. And then they're hunting for that fur ball. They think it's still there, but they're hunting for that actually on the rabbit scent.
Yeah.
Pop the rabbit ball down, done. So on the Sunday, we went back in the pen, and he'd settled then. I mean, he'd had 5 hours in the car on the Friday, and he was a bit of a nightmare. He was pretty full on. But what a different dog on Sunday. Hunting, nose down, going like the clappers.
That's
he
awesome.
He flushed a rabbit out the back of a Christmas tree. Which was laid down. He knew it was there, but he stopped. And then we hunted him on that again. And then hunting him in some dock stuff, and he put one right out on the end of his nose. And the advantage, it would be good if he'd have seen it go, but he didn't see it go. But you're saying on the video, his nose has gone there, and that rabbit's popped out. So he pushed it out. But then I was able again to hunt him back on that scent again.
Yeah.
And he went like the clappers, put him on his lead, job done. So the lesson he learned, I could have done with a week up there. I'd have done that every day. In an ideal world, I would have liked him to have pushed that rabbit out or a rabbit out and seen it gone and stop. But the fact that he was starting to connect the scent to something being there, which was the little bit I was missing down here a little bit. So I come home with the biggest smile on my face. It was a massive lesson for him.
Yeah, no, that's great. Do you use rabbit scent at all? Do you know how you can use pheasant scent? Do you use rabbit scent at all?
No, I don't. I don't tend to use any scent because if I'm using fur dummies or a fur ball, I will spit on it just to add it a little bit. If I've got any game, a cold game or anything, I just stick it in the back with my dummies, so that gets on. I've never been a fan of scent at all. My logic is that the dog don't know what that is. You know, it doesn't know that's rabbit scent or pheasant scent. it's like I can drag, as we did actually, I can drag a fur dummy out, and they'll still take a line on that dummy.
Yeah. Yeah, because
So,
I mean, it doesn't matter how well they cure it. I mean, it's the same. I get a pheasant dummy out, and the dogs go mad.
yeah,
Even before they've seen it, they can smell it.
Yeah,
and so it's, you know, the nose is phenomenal. Doesn't matter how well you cure it, there's still a smell there.
So going on from the weekend, which will lead us nicely into dogging in. My next step with him now is this coming week. It's been too hot these last 2 days, but this coming week I should take him up to the shoot where I've been dogging in with Ted, and I'm going to start now keeping him on the lead, but walking down the rides, so he'll see pheasants start to flush. I need to, at this stage, it is steadying, but in my eyes, I'm desensitizing him to it.
I think when they're young, it's more about desensitization, isn't it? And then once they've been out for a season, I think the steadiness then comes in after they've been out for a season, because they know what it's about, they know how exciting it is, and so that after that first season, the dogging in a lot of the time is about.
But I'll do that. I'll do that. You know, that might only be 2 minutes to start with. It might be, if he gets too excited, we call it too hot, and not as in terms of heat, but if he just boils over, I'll pop him back in the car, and then I'll just extend it. And my concern is, and it always is, and it's a fault in cockers, is they can be noisy, they squeak and get overexcited, and I don't want that to happen. He's not shown me yet that that's in him, but it could well be.
That's
so I shall,
because Spud's noisy, or he can be noisy. I tend to put him 10 feet away from me in a downstate and tell him to be quiet, but it is in his line, and I didn't know that when I got him. And the keeper who bred him, he said you would never breed again from that line because they're too noisy.
I mean, look, is it in his line? I think noise can be hereditary, and I think it's in cockers, full stop. I mean, I know a number of dogs that you would expect it to have noise, but they have. But also I think it's more likely induced, and I think it's when these dogs are put under pressure too early. Now pressure can mean, I spoke to somebody fairly recently that's just taken a very young cocker out dogging in, and couldn't work out why it was screaming its head off.
Adrenaline.
Too early, too soon.
Need a safety valve.
And pressure can also be, throwing dummies around it and just letting it get wound up. So it's twofold. The one thing, and people may disagree, it's nigh on impossible to stop. Nigh on. And I'll tell you a little thing. My Harry, he's 12. Hunting, beating, I've done everything with him, never makes a sound. Never has done. And yet, as he's got older, picking up, he started. And it got worse and worse and worse. I mean, he's kind of retired now anyway. And last year, and it's the most annoying thing. Totally steady. He'll sit next to me off the lead, and there'll be birds dropping and flying over him. But he just gets worked up. And that's happened as he's got older.
I mean, I think I see that a lot, where season on season the dog will get more and more excited because the first season they don't really know what it's about. The second season they've got that remembrance, but then the third season, the second, like with my friend, the second they see her put the dog box in the car, the adrenaline spikes straight away before the first shot goes. The adrenaline's running really high, and so season on season the squeak will get louder and louder and louder. And the only way that, there's a couple of things I do use water, but a good thing as well is just get the dogs holding dummy. No, I mean, it doesn't work on the shoot. Not interested in dummy. I'm more interested. But on the training field, on the training field, give them a dummy to hold. And that kind of shuts them up a bit.
I do a lot of stuff with mine, and I've been doing it with Percy, where I'll use Ted for that. So Percy's got to sit there while Ted goes out on a retrieve.
Yeah.
He just got to sit there and watch stuff, and that's kind of that helps a lot because he doesn't get stressed out because he's just, oh, that's okay. Ted's go. Ironically, Ted probably gets a little bit, and he's the most level-headed dog I've ever come across. And yet when I send Percy out, it's funny actually because Ted comes back and it'll come next to me. I'll have Percy there, and it'll be silent. And then I'll go, Percy, and Percy go off for his retrieve, and then Ted, it's almost like he's holding his breath, and then he'll go.
Yeah.
So he needs to pant.
Stress pant.
Yeah. Well, it's not stress pant. It's where he's done his exercise. If he's done the retrieve, but because he thinks he's going again, he's almost like holding his breath. I think probably I put it down to waiting so he can hear the command. But so I do that a lot with the dogs, and I think it's never letting them second guess, isn't it? If you can always be one step ahead with them. Then they can't second guess you. But the noise is something that I always think you're better off trying to avoid it. And then therefore, with Percy, I'd like to try and think I'd get him out in January this year. If I don't, I don't. I'm not going to break my neck over it. If I think he's ready for a nice little quiet day, then because I think it's a good time to try him. But if he's not, I won't. No.
You're going to beat with him?
I mean, he'll have to ultimately he'll have to do what all the others have had to do. So I'll do a bit of picking up with him. I'll beat with him. He'll have to do my photography courses. Yeah. Ironically, later on today, I've got to try and get a picture of him posing with a partridge in his mouth for a front picture of a calendar that's coming up. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get him to do that because I've only just started him on cold game. So mine have to do everything really, and ultimately for me, I'm going to be shooting over him. Yeah. So
I didn't know if you were planning on keeping it with Beaton because I know you said with Harry you were going to stop picking up with them at one point.
Yeah, I have, and I mean the thing is, it's like with Ted. I mean, I for the last 2 years I've just gone beating with him, but certainly on one of the shoots now, I've left it that if they want me to do a day's picking up with Ted, I'll do a day's picking up with him. So I'd like my dogs to be versatile in terms of they can turn their hands to anything that might be needed. I mean, it was hard work with just having Ted last year. We did a lot of days and we kind of got away with it in terms of only one injury. But we've got a lot of days this year, and hence the reason, again, leads us nicely into this dogging in business. I've started dogging in with him every evening, and that's to start getting him fit for the season, because that's the other hard thing, isn't it? Is to get these dogs fit, ready for a day's shooting.
So before you go any further with dogging in, do you want to just say what it is? It's nothing to do with cars.
No, it probably is a good idea. It's quite unique, I suppose, really, to the shooting. But it's not unique. Well, it is unique to the shooting environment. Yeah, it is a shooting term. Basically, this time of the year, the keepers have all got their pheasant poults in, and they start putting them all into what they call release pens. So these are big pens that are secure to start with, so the birds can't get out until they settle. And then they've got these release pens have pop holes in them. So as the birds get settled and see that pen as home, which is ultimately what they need to be, and that I'll explain that why later on. They then open the pop holes, and then these birds can start to explore the areas around them. So what dogging in basically does is these birds will wander quite a way away from their home pen. So the idea is to, by dogging in, you're pushing the young birds back to the pen where you want them to roost, to their home pen. And it's amazing, really, especially this year, because the weather's been so good down here. I mean, the birds have grown and come on really well, and they are all over the place. On the shoot where I've been dogging in, one problem is they get out onto the road because they want to go out on the road and grit and pick the grit up to help them digest their food. Well, of course, that's not good for cars and everything else. So we need to try and keep them back off of that boundary on the road. And for most keepers this time of the year, it's a pretty full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the keeper over there starts feeding at 4:30 in the morning. Once he's finished feeding, so basically when the birds come down to roost, there's food already for them there. And he'll be dogging in pretty well all the time. So I've been going over in the evenings, 2.5, 3 hours, with only using Ted,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to be flushing 20, 30, 40 birds at a time. So you need a dog that's going to be nice and steady, not lose its head. I'm quite particular with Ted because whether he flushes one bird or 30 birds, I need him to stop.
Yeah.
Because this goes on to when I shoot over him, I need him to stop when he flushes.
Yeah.
A lot of keepers, dogs that dog in, basically all that keeper needs is for that dog to push those birds up.
Yeah.
And
Run the
then
line. Yeah.
run the line and not chase after them, basically. So slightly different requirement,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a great way of getting your dogs fit.
And
I'm
you?
very privileged. And oh god, we walk some miles. Yeah, yeah, you do.
We
do walk some miles
for the shooting season as well.
Yeah, yeah. Because when it's warm like this, they'd cut the grass verges up there last Thursday, and they were everywhere. The biggest problem as well on a lot of shoots will be like all the wheat's still up, all the crops are still up.
Yeah.
So the birds are getting it. The birds are getting in the crops.
Uh-huh.
And again, they'll just get on a tram line, and that's like the M1 for them. They'll just keep going.
Yeah.
And not necessarily in the right direction. So it's a really vital part of the shooting year, and something that a lot of people never see.
Uh-huh.
You know, these guys that turn up to shoot on a day, they've got no idea that keeper for the last God knows how many weeks and months has been working very, very hard to try and keep his birds in his environment.
Yeah.
It's
so interesting. I remember the first time I went with Bart, Craigie, years ago, and just walking up the road and just having them like running in front of you and then going in the hedges, and you go right there in the hedges, and then they'll turn around and come back out and cross the road again.
Yeah.
And it's to start off with, it's desensitizing the dog, isn't it? And then thereafter it's the steadiness and the fitness and
you don't, you know, again, I want mine to stay fairly close to me. Whereas, you know, most keepers' dogs, I mean, a lot of keepers are sitting in a quad bike and their dogs will run next to the quad bike, and they'll be flagging one side and the dog will be doing the job the other side.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's hard work for the keepers' dogs as well, because they'll be doing this 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah.
The wheat, especially at the moment, it's absolutely cutting their eyes to pieces.
Oh, no.
And so I gave Ted, he's had a couple of days off because his eyes were getting quite sore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with all due respect, for me, I don't have to go and do it. I do it as a favour, if you like. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard on the dogs, especially forecasting 33, 34 degrees tomorrow.
Good grief.
So,
how were the dog's eyes on the moors, Nick? Because I know I took dogs up at Tinto, and Bud had a rough time of it. He was hunting, go up Tinto, which is one of the Graham Hills near us, and just, it's primarily heather, but there's some ghosts on there as well. And Spud come back, and his eyes were really, really bad.
The heather, there was little blocks of heather that we went on. The heather is kind of below your knee height. So, fun enough, with the dogs, the heather really scratches inside their legs.
Yeah, he was very scratched.
That can be quite sore on them. Yeah. Especially cockers, because they're obviously that much lower. The bracken can be pretty hard on their eyes as well. Even this time of the year, it's not funny enough. It's not so bad when it's brown and laid over, but when it's green, it's quite whippy. But the wheat at the moment, I mean, I won't put him in barley because funny enough, they've just started to take the barley off. The other thing I'm very careful on, and people should be aware, is the rape when that's been harvested, because the stalks are so sharp. And they're staying quite high, so that's something else to be to watch. But hopefully the wheat will be off in a week or 2 time. The partridges came in. Part of the partridges came in the day before yesterday, so they'll still be in their pens, but they'll be let out in a week or 2. And then again, they've learned that that's their home.
Uh,
So just going back to the release pen, the aim is the keepers will feed in another area. So, for example, one of the main pens I've got, he's got a wood that's a good distance away. And the aim ultimately is they fly those birds from a flushing point back, so they're flying back to home, what they know is their home. That's why it's important at this stage they roost back in the pen, and then obviously the guns are basically put between the flushing point and the pen.
I mean, it's such a great thing to watch, isn't it? When you're watching it cycle by cycle. I mean, to me, it's just the circle of life. Like the end of January, so the beginning of February, and the shooting season's over, and they start rounding all the birds up, and they go off, round the cocks and the hens up, and it's just, you go, right, okay, that's the season over.
I've been lucky enough.
Start again.
Over the last few years, I've done a couple of gamekeepers' diaries for the magazine with 2 different keepers, and it's a fascinating cycle. They're worrying about their cover crops going in. Is there going to be enough rain? Is it going to be warm enough for the cover crops to come up? And again,
too wet.
Last year, the year before last, we had the drought, and that was really bad. Everybody suffered with that. This year, it's pretty well been nigh on perfect, because we had that warm weather back earlier in the year. July's been, they've just said, I think it's been one of the wettest Julys we've had. So, of course, the moisture's in the ground, so everything's growing. This year has been pretty well perfect, which is ironic that there's going to be so many shoots and not going ahead.
I know.
And as a consequence, there's going to be people, unfortunately, that are not going to have work for their dogs this year.
No. And there's a lot of shoots closing down as well.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I've got this new one that's opened and starting this year, and then one of our original ones will go. So we've got work for the dogs, but I feel sorry for people perhaps that have got a dog that's perhaps coming on 18 months, 19 months old, perhaps 2 years, and this would have been their first season. They've done all that training, all that hard work, and now the dog just needs that little bit of experience, and they might struggle, and that's a shame. I mean, for me with Percy, if he doesn't do much this season, then it's not the end of the world for me. I'll look forward to next season.
So what will it be, 18 months at the end of the season?
It'll be about 18 months at the end of the season, yeah. But like I said, if he's not right, I'd certainly like to try and do something with him, as I say, back end of January, when there's not so many birds about, the cover's not so thick. But I'll pick my moment with him. I'm in no hurry with him. It's like everybody, you put a lot of time and effort. If you're having lessons, financial commitments as well, if you're paying somebody, so just don't be in a hurry to.
No. I know it's something that really winds me up with Facebook, because everybody wants to get the dogs out so young, and you go, it's quite. I find it quite interesting, because people say, "Oh, leave them alone. They're a puppy. Don't start training them yet. They're a puppy. Let them run a bit wild and all of that lot." And so people aren't training their dogs like sensibly, walk on a lead and recall and steadiness.
Sit stays,
Sit stay, all of that lot. People are going, "Oh no, let them be a puppy, let them be a puppy." So people are letting the dogs run wild until they're about 9 months old, and then somebody says, "Oh yeah, I'm telling my dog shooting a 12-month-old," and you go,
"Oh yeah."
Really, you're going to end up completely brain melting them.
I've seen it, and it's such a shame, because I mean, Harry's 12. And he came out with me last year, and he's totally deaf now. But I've had 10 really good years with him, and he's not broken. He's still fairly sensible. His pace has gone a little bit, and like I say, trying to stop him on a stop whistle, he can't hear it. Well, at least he tells me he can't hear it. But we've got a long, you've got a long time, and most of those problems that I think that can occur are going to occur because you're doing too much too soon. And it's fine if you've got other dogs, because like me with Percy, I'm not too worried because I've got Ted. If I just had Percy, I'd be thinking, oh, something. And that's why, funnily enough, about every when my dogs get to 4-ish, I kind of think, I could do with another one now, because I look at 2 years, but not everybody's got, lucky enough to perhaps have more than one dog, and at some point we'd like to get down to 2. So, but when I look at Percy now, I mean, he'll do me, in theory, if he goes to 12, I'll be nearly 70. So will I really want another spaniel?
Good.
That's scary. That's the scary one.
That is really scary. I was talking to Gary the other day, and who's on the project. He came on the podcast, and we're the same age. And he said, I don't know at my age if I'll get another dog. And I went, how old are you? And he says, and he said, 54. And he's like, oh my God, we're pretty much the same age.
54? Blimey.
I'm getting a puppy.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm going to get a puppy.
Yeah, you got another. It's terrible when you gauge your age by how many more dogs you can have, isn't it?
I know. So, are you going to get another cocker? Or are you going to start bigger?
No. It's got to be. These little cockers. They just. The bottom line of it is they just make me laugh. Yeah. And they, in my opinion, they can do everything that I need them to do in the shooting field. They are little characters. We've actually nicknamed Percy the Thug, and he is. And Deb, fun enough, my wife Deb, she said to me last night, we were sat there watching television. She said, "Look at that dog," and we've got a big buddleier down the garden, and he's jumping vertically. I don't even know whether he can jump horizontally yet, because I've never even tried it. But vertically, he can get up nearly as high as my shoulder.
To get the flowers?
No. There was a blackbird sat in the tree, and he's ping, ping, ping. And Dev said to me, we've never had a dog like him, and we haven't had a dog like him. He's just, but my God, does he switch it on for me? Yeah, and so I like their little characters. They're we've got 4, so they're not very big, so you can have more than one. Yeah, and they don't take up much room in the car. I think the other thing I like about them as well, they're really people dogs. I think they're people dogs. They thrive on being around people.
Normally around your neck.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. What I say, don't you? You don't train a cocker, you wear a cocker. I must tell you a little thing the other day, and it was so brilliant. I was talking to John Reese, who bred Percy. He's kind of old school cocker. He was in cockers in like the 70s, when they really weren't very popular at all. And he said to me, I was talking to him about Percy, and he's quite a quick learner, which is great. And he said to me, he's Welsh, so I can't do a Welsh accent, so I'm not even going to try. He said to me, thing is, Nick, with a Labrador, that'll be thinking to itself, wonder what Nick is going to train me to do today. And a cocker, that'll be thinking, I wonder what I can train Nick to do today. and I thought, something? You're dead right. You've got to be one step up. You've got to be one step in front of them all the time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I am totally
besotted.
That's the word. Yeah, but don't get me wrong. I mean, I had a Springer come training yesterday, and their power is just awesome compared with a cocker. And I've got another one that comes ace, and he's one of my favourite dogs, and he will just go through a brick wall. Nothing will stop him. He's scarily so, really. But the thing I really love about cockers, and they do say it, and I accept it as true, to see them on a line of a runner. Yeah. They are, that's their forte. I've been lucky enough and privileged enough to see that a few times, and that is just fantastic. So will we get another one? Probably at some point. I know Deb would like one of her own, because she had Sweet. We had Sweet that she lost last. We lost last year at 16, and Sweet was Deb's dog. Fuss, who's 10, Deb has worked Fuss a bit, but we got him a bit older, and he loves her to bits, but he would work for anybody. He's a bit of a robot like that. So I think at some point, Deb would like one of her own to train as well. I'm not so sure she'd have a Percy pup. I think she'd prefer a Ted pup. So yeah, they're great little things, and it's just a shame when you speak to people like John, that's been in them for such a long time, and he said to me, it's just a shame because there are elements that are ruining my breed.
Oh yeah,
and so when they become popular, that's the shame of it, really, because people are not breeding to create the best again.
I know. No, go
Sorry,
on.
I was just gonna say that, and that's why there's this little group in Carmarthenshire, if you like, and Johnny's in this little group, and loosely termed. You see, the guys in Wales always line bred, so they always bred very closely, and very rarely went outside of their lines. That's like your Macedonian lines and things like that. So they almost did it old school wise, really, in terms of keeping everything tight. So they would be able to, and John could tell you, if he bred this dog to this dog, that's going to produce this, almost like peas in a pod, size-wise, everything can be uniformed. And they still maintain that as a philosophy, which now, because of this coefficiency check, people now are almost disregarding it, because obviously the COI is so much higher because they're line breeding. Like, for example, Percy's mother, his mother is his grandmother on his father's side.
Okay.
So that's quite high.
That's very high.
But John knows exactly what's going to be produced. And so that's another conversation altogether, and one that I'm not fully au fait with. But it's fascinating when you speak to these old school cocker guys, because they are. You talk about passion; they are passionate.
Yeah, I mean, Jill, who breeds the labs, so she doesn't breed now, but she was breeding the labs where I get my dogs from. She didn't breed tight to the line like that, but she knew all of the different stud dogs and what they produced, and this is before the coefficiency came out on the Kennel Club site, and she would go over the 5 generations and go, well, this one's a little bit close, but if I go with that one, Bart was quite strong, so she looked for something that was quite heavy in the Tasco line. The Tasco line, Alexander Beetle is quite a soft one, so she would be looking to bring in the softer line, and so she, so knowledgeable. It just it blew me away, the knowledge on these different lines and the different temperatures, back length, leg length, and amazing. Whereas now I think people are more reliant on algorithms from like the Kennel Club coefficiency and things like that.
Well, I agree with that, but I'll tell you the other thing I think is as well is fashion. I mean, especially in Cocker Spaniels.
Well, fashion.
If you've got a certain colour, that's more fashionable than another colour, and also going to the dog of the day. If a dog wins the championships, that dog's going to get used, regardless of whether.
A lot.
I mean, it does get used a lot, and people then are looking just to add that little. But you could go to a really ordinary. You could have not ordinary bitch, a nice little working bitch, but you're just looking for that red. Then you'll go to a field trial champion, for example.
Yeah.
And equally, there's some really good dogs that will never field trial.
Yeah.
But so it swings and roundabouts. But I think people don't do enough homework on, as you just said, Jill did. People don't do enough homework on backgrounds and pedigrees, and then on the other hand, there are people that really, really do, and they might be missing out on a really good dog because they consider the COI as a percentage too high.
Yeah,
So and most of these knowledgeable trainers or owners will. I mean, if you phone up the likes of John or any number of other people and said, "Oh, my bitch has got such and such a line in it," if you've got a dog that's suitable, he'd be probably honest enough to say yes or no.
Yeah,
I would suggest you go this route or go that route. Yeah. And there are some nice people, the guys that bred Harry and Ted. same thing. You'd phone them up and they would be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas there are other people would just want the stud fee, and that'd be it.
Yeah.
So people just need to do their homework.
They do, not necessarily. I mean, I don't like this fashion with dogs. I speak out about it, whether it's a fashionable training equipment or, a fashionable breed, or having to put this with that, and, the cockapoos and the labradoodles and golden doodles and all of that. And I find, I think one of the worst things that can happen to a breed is for it to become fashionable. I think it's just a heartbreak and seeing the change.
Yeah.
Also, when they appear in Disney movies as well. I used to work for Beagle Rescue. And whenever Disney brought a film out with beagles in it, Cats and Dogs was one of the big ones.
Yeah. Well, 101 Dalmatians.
In the Dalmatians.
Classic,
In Turner and Hooch years ago, or the Dog de Bordeaux. And it's awful because people go out and get them and then they end up in rescue with adolescents. And it's just, I just find it really sad, fashionable breeds, is you think, okay, that's going to really have a detrimental effect on the breed.
And I think this is where, and I'm going to big you up now, this is where what you've done with the pet gun dog stuff has been so good, because I'm on the gun dog side in pure terms, that what I do with my dogs. Mm-hmm. But there's so many people that have these gun dog breeds, cocker spaniels especially, and don't stimulate them. It's not. I was only talking to a lady this morning at a lesson. It's not even necessarily about physical exercise.
No. It's
mental exercise. Yeah. You do little hunting games with them, and you might only have to do that for 10 minutes. That's like going for a 10-mile walk for them.
Yeah.
So it's and to be able to tap into things like the pet gun dog and think, well, I don't never want to go. My bookkeeper's got a Ted pup. She's never ever go in the shooting field with it. Never. But she comes for lessons every 4 weeks, and we do memory retrieves and we do blind retrieves, and
brilliant.
And the dog, absolutely. In fact, I wish I had the dog because he's class. and ironically, it hunts like an absolute demon under complete control. And I say to Bev, I said, that's just natural ability. Sometimes you think, I put all this effort into this dog, and I've done this and I've done that, and then something doesn't quite click or it doesn't quite go, and then Bev comes along with Fern, and Fern rips up the stick piles and through this grass, and like she's been doing it all her life. Never had a day's hunting training ever. But that's all about stimulation, and fun enough, she does agility with her, and she does scent work with her as well. So there's loads of stuff really now they can do.
I think it is important to get that brain working the way that it's been designed, if you like, the way that we've bred over the years. And it was the reason I split the books up, so that the advanced book is where you go on birds, because a lot of people aren't interested in going shooting. No. They just want to have a really well-mannered dog that they can take to the pub, or that they can take down the local park and throw some dummies for. And serious people then progress to the advanced book.
Yeah.
And then it introduces things like shooting and birds and game.
And I find as well, when people can see what their dogs can do, once they tap into that ability, that natural ability, and when you start pointing out to them, saying, look, that tail on the cocker spaniel, that tail's dropped, he's dropped his head, he's done this, and they would see that but not know why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Tail actions just, and I use a phrase, he just touched that. And I thought, what do you mean just touched it? Well, he just touched the scent of that dummy. Yeah, but the dummy's like 15 yards to the right to where the dog is. Yeah, but he's touched, now what?
Nose has got it.
And off he'll go. And once they start to clue into that and tap into that, that's when they start to be able to read their dogs, don't they? And they'll get more out of their dogs.
Yeah. And for me, I always look on, part of the reason is, the pet gun dog came about is to fix relationships. It's a relationship fixer. And so when things are going wrong at home, that sounds like marriage guidance, doesn't it? It's like when things are going wrong at home with your dog.
Puppy guidance, yeah.
Puppy guidance. The best thing you can do at that point is to do something with your dog, because the dog then starts looking at you for all of its enjoyment, and it's and it builds the bond and it builds the trust. And then when you've got the trust and the bond with your dog, your relationship just changes out of all recognition.
And I say to people, you've got to be the most interesting thing in the world. And when you go out with a gun with your dog, or if I've got a game bag on or something, they know.
Oh, yeah.
They know what's going on. And I always find, I'll tell you the fascinating thing I find is when you send these dogs out for a pheasant or a rabbit or what it might be, which is food for them, they bring it back to you.
We've had this talk many times.
We have, and we might have even talked about it before. But that's a fascinating little thing.
It is.
To me.
You know, people, I mean, you know, I'm a raw feeder and I get my dogs, you know, I've got videos of my dogs retrieving, you know, duck necks and turkey necks. And, and they bring it back to me and then I give it to them to eat. And it's the relationship with your dog.
Yeah.
That's what
it's just trying to develop to be the most interesting thing and more interesting than what's going on.
And important.
Around and we'll use important as good.
Yeah, important. Nick,
I'll tell you what, we've covered some ground again.
I know, I was thinking that. I said, oh my God, look at the time.
How long have we done?
Just over an hour, I think.
No.
I know.
You'll have to edit this.
No.
I reckon people listen to these podcasts when they want to go to sleep and they only get through the first 10 minutes.
I listen to them on my morning walk. So I listen. I don't watch them. I listen to them and I stick my little earpiece in and then I do a power walk with the dogs. Yeah, my exercise. And I have somebody doing this in my ear.
Nice. Yeah, well, you can listen to my rabble again, can't you? So
yes.
But hopefully that was interesting for people. And give them a little insight into dogging in and rabbit pens and the grouse moors and everything else. It's all part of our real existence and something the coming months we're really looking forward to. It.
No, I think it's great because I share it on like the novice gun dog forums as well and different forums, and it's really good because people are so scattered and they don't get a chance just to sit down and chew the fat with people and have that conversation. And when they go shooting, quite often they're really focused on the shooting or they're focused on getting there or they're a bit nervous. And so just to have people talking about and letting the conversation go wherever it goes, I think it's really good, especially at the minute because people are missing people. So I think
I think the other thing is he's in the gun dog world that, you know, people can be kind of overawed by individuals and not wanting to ask what may be a silly question or and I when people email me different things, I always do my absolute, and I know you do as well, just do my best to try and answer them. And because I know when I do it, you know, if I've got something to ask, I've got certain people that is this right? Have I got this right in my head? And then sometimes a different view. But the other thing is people get, I'm not saying, you know, our views are right, but people do get such conflict. I mean, I've seen on some of the forums, you know, somebody put up something and I never get involved in it. It's up to everybody. But you know, if I can just point somebody in the right direction, or if I can't then say, well, look, have a look at this, or go and do this, or pick up a book. It's in fact, I've got a chap coming to see me Tuesday that's just got a cocker pup, and he's got the pet gun dog, the puppy pet gun dog, and he said to me how useful it's been. It's his first dog, and so I'm looking forward to seeing him on Tuesday. I introduced him to a place board and said, look, to start off in the early days with a place board. So yeah, I'm hoping to see how he gets on.
Excellent.
He gets on with that. So good.
No, that's great.
Right, well, I'm going to go and get a cup of tea.
Well, I'm hopping through my coffee. It's really cold now because I didn't want to slurp it when I was listening.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And we'll catch up very soon.
We will. Nick, it was a pleasure as always.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Shall see you middle towards end of the season. I'm sure you'll be back before the end of the season.
I think so, probably.
Good stuff. Thank you very much.
See you later.
Take care.
See you soon. Bye. Bye.